On January 12, 1998, a quiet highway in Loran County, Georgia became the scene of one of the most disturbing police encounters ever recorded. Deputy Kyle Dinkheller was only 22 years old. He had recently joined the Loran County Sheriff's Office and was known as a calm, dedicated young officer who took his job seriously. That evening, just before sunset, Deputy Dinkheller was on routine patrol along a rural highway. The road was quiet, surrounded by trees and open land. Traffic was light, and nothing seemed unusual. Then he noticed a pickup truck speeding down the road. It wasn't going dangerously fast, but it was enough to justify a traffic stop, something every officer does dozens of times during a normal shift. Dinkheller pulled out behind the truck and activated his lights. The driver slowed down and pulled over onto the side of the road. Everything seemed routine. The driver stepped out of the vehicle before Dinkheller even approached. His name was Andrew Howard Brannon, a Vietnam War veteran. At first, nothing seemed too strange, but within seconds, Dinkheller realized something wasn't right. Brannon started acting strangely. He began pacing around the road, waving his arms, shouting random things, and doing erratic movements that made no sense. It almost looked like he was performing some kind of strange dance or martial arts routine. Dinkheller tried to keep the situation calm. He repeatedly instructed Brannon to get back into his vehicle and remain still, but Brannon ignored him. Concerned about the man's behavior, Dinkheller radioed dispatch and requested backup. Unfortunately, backup officers were still several minutes away, and what happened next would unfold in less than a minute. Without warning, Brannon suddenly ran back toward his truck. Dinkheller shouted commands for him to stop, but Brannon reached inside the truck and pulled out a rifle. At that moment, the routine traffic stop instantly turned into a life-or-death situation. Dinkheller drew his service weapon and began shouting commands. "Sir, drop the weapon!" But Brannon didn't listen. Instead, he raised the rifle and opened fire. Gunshots echoed across the empty highway. Dinkheller dove behind his patrol car for cover, trying to return fire while also continuing to command Brannon to drop the weapon. The entire confrontation was captured on the patrol car's dash cam. For several terrifying moments, the two exchanged gunfire. Dinkheller attempted to stay behind his vehicle for protection, but Brannon kept advancing and firing repeatedly. Then, a shot struck Dinkheller. The young deputy collapsed onto the pavement, but Brannon didn't stop. He walked closer and continued firing multiple rounds. When backup officers finally arrived, it was already too late. Deputy Kyle Dinkheller had died on that quiet stretch of highway. The incident shocked law enforcement across the United States. What made it even more disturbing was the dash cam footage. The entire encounter, from the initial stop to the final moments, had been recorded. Today, the footage is shown in many police training programs to demonstrate how quickly routine situations can become deadly. Brannon was later captured and convicted of murder, but the tragedy of that day remains a haunting reminder for police officers everywhere. A simple traffic stop, one moment of unpredictability, and a young deputy who never made it home. In January 1983, police in Memphis, Tennessee, responded to a call that would lead to one of the strangest and most disturbing police incidents in the city's history. Officers received reports about a suspicious house on Janet Street. Neighbors had complained about strange behavior in some home. A group of armed men were living there and had been acting aggressively in the neighborhood. Some, even the men, were part of the cult. Police officers Robert Heather and Ray Schmidt were to investigate. At first glance, the house was ordinary. It was just a home in a quiet residential area. But the moment the officers approached the front door, something was wrong. They knocked. There was silence for a few seconds. Then suddenly, the door flew open. Multiple armed men rushed out. Within seconds, the situation spiraled completely out of control. The men grabbed Officer Hester and dragged him inside the house. Officer Schwill managed to escape and ran for safety. He immediately called for backup. Soon, the entire street was surrounded by police vehicles. Officers quickly learned that the suspects inside were part of a radical group that believed their leader was a religious figure. Negotiators tried to use suspects inside the house. The risks were strange and thrilling. Hours passed. It was even more disturbing. Officers outside heard screams coming from inside the house. At one point, they heard it's like someone begged help. Police feared the worst, but command officers hesitated to launch a full assault because they believed the suspects might surrender peacefully. The stand continued through the night and into the next day. 30 hours later, SWAT finally entered the house. What they found inside was horrifying. Several of the suspects had taken their own lives, and Officer Robert Hester was found dead. He had been brutally beaten during the standoff. The scene inside the house shocked even experienced investigators. The incident later became known as the Shannon Street Massacre. To this day, it remains one of the darkest moments in Memphis police history. A simple welfare check had turned into a nightmare, and one officer paid the ultimate price. On the night of October 16, 2006, a quiet neighborhood in Manchester, New Hampshire was about to witness a tragedy that would shake the entire state. Police officer Michael Briggs had been serving with the Manchester Police Department for several years. He was known among fellow officers as someone who always showed up when help was needed. That night, Briggs was working patrol when police began searching for a local suspect connected to a recent violent crime. The suspect's name was Michael Addison. Addison had already been involved in several criminal incidents, and officers believed he might be armed. Just after midnight, Officer Briggs spotted someone matching the suspect's description, walking along a dark street. He pulled over and stepped out of his patrol car. The street was quiet. No other people were around. Briggs approached the man and began speaking with him. For a moment, everything seemed calm, but what Briggs didn't know was that Addison had already made a deadly decision. Without warning, Addison pulled out a handgun and fired. The first shot struck Briggs in the chest. The officer collapsed immediately. Addison ran from the scene, disappearing into the night. Emergency responders rushed Briggs to the hospital. But, despite the doctor's efforts, he died from his injuries. The killing of a police officer triggered one of the largest manhunts in the region. Police departments across multiple states joined the search. Helicopters scanned the area. Roadblocks were set up. Tips began pouring in. Finally, about 15 hours later, authorities tracked Addison down in Boston. He was arrested and charged with the murder of Officer Michael Briggs. The case sparked intense debate across New Hampshire about the death penalty for the murder of police officers. For the Manchester Police Department, however, the tragedy was deeply personal. Officer Briggs had simply been doing his job, trying to protect his community. And in a single moment of violence, a routine patrol turned into a deadly ambush.